Oh, good morning. Yes, it's an early morning again today. Back to a little bit more reality here. Yesterday, unfortunately, didn't start off quite the way it should have, but we pushed that behind us now. And something that many of us really don't realize so much here in the Philippines, especially when you're living overseas, looking at the Philippines, is that the Philippines is unique in the sense that the system of laws that apply here, the system of looking after its people, is more than just looking after its people. It's a sort of an inbuilt protection of the whole society itself. Most of the laws are here based upon the premise that they're protecting the people, when in fact they're actually protecting the country in a way from the over participation really of foreigners in the country. I liken it to those that have any knowledge of Japan, how Japan has been over the centuries very insular. It's been one race, one group of people. Now, Japan is a feudal society of many centuries in the making. But unlike many other countries, Westerners are slowly being welcomed. And I say slowly. I won't say actually welcomed is probably the wrong word, more accepted. But it's still not seen necessarily as a good thing to have, for instance, a Japanese family, to have a foreigner within the realms of its own family makeup. They like to keep their country pure. And I think that to a degree, the Philippines is the same. Unfortunately, the morals of the Hispanic background, that is the free love approach, it's not necessarily moral in the sense that it's bad, but it's not seen as that bad to fraternize with foreigners, because in a way they can do that knowingly that they as Filipino are protected 100%. For instance, as a foreigner, you have very little rights here at all. And even if they were written in the law to protect everybody equally, foreigner and locals, they're not enforced. They're enforced to the benefit of foreigners. No, Filipino and Filipino. Because a country that sees that there is no rights attributed to foreigners per se in law is really telling you that they don't really like foreigners. I'm not suggesting that they're racist, but immediately something goes wrong, it's presumed that it's caused by the foreigner. There's never any suggestion that it could be a Filipino's fault. Now, that's not trying to be derogatory against Filipinos in general. It's just the fact that your word over a Filipino has a different ratio of acceptance by those in power. And most foreigners have come here and will always remain a guest in this country. They're not going to be seen as even really assimilated. They're accepted, like you accept the fact that you have a sore on your face. Sure, you can give it some medicine or some application and get rid of it. Hence, you can remove a visa, but you can do that anywhere in the world. But here in the Philippines, that you get into an accident. First of all, it appears that they listen to both sides, and in most cases they do. But it always comes down to, in the minimum, a 50-50. Why 50-50 if you can clearly see that the fault was laid at the foot of a Filipino? Well, it's about saving face. So, within law, even if it's not written, saving face is no doubt entwined in those thoughts of those enforcing them. You can also imagine that in East Asia, as perceived by the West, there's a lot of corruption. Well, you don't have to look far in the West to see corruption too. So that's a pretty stupid statement to make. But the reality is that on the ground floor level, there is a lot of corruption. And that's because, of course, if you don't pay somebody who maintains the law, who is afforded the power to do so, with sufficient money to support themselves and their family, they're inevitably going to be enticed by those that have got the dosh to get themselves out of a problem. And that's just life. You really you're not going to change it. But there is clearly an unsettling side of the Philippines, in the sense that you won't be taken responsibly as a person to be trusted, to be agreed with. Because first of all, you're arguing with, when I say arguing, your problem of getting your point across will always be undermined by the fact that they speak their own language to each other. And you're not truly aware of what the circumstances they're suggesting is the retort, the argument that they're put forward. And therefore, you have an arbitrator in the middle who is a Filipino. You have a problem that has taken effect in the Philippines. And you have three people involved. You have the person who is aggrieved, you have the person who's trying to defend themselves, and you have the person trying to make head of everything that's going on. And as a result, inevitably there's going to lean more towards the Filipino, because he or she will be able to explain themselves better than you as a foreigner, with a person that maybe doesn't either understand your language properly either, or they have a leaning towards, why should we let a foreigner tell us how to do things our way? So, guys, the idea that somehow we can stand up for ourselves in this country is a pipe dream. Because if we start to flex our muscle, stick up for what we think is right, and maybe we know is right, it won't be right here, and it will be seen as a challenge. And one thing about challenging a Filipino is to challenge their whole existence. After all, they live here. They're not visitors. You're the one that is a visitor, no matter whether it's 20 years or only 2 years. or just 2 weeks. You're always going to be a visitor. Someone if they don't like, they just get rid of you, and we need to remember that. Staying under the radar is very important here. When you say assimilating, it's not even assimilating, it's just trying not to be noticed. That's very hard, given that we're often 6 foot plus, white, and pretty obvious that we're not Filipino or Filipino. So the message I suppose I'm giving you is that don't think that what works for you in your own country will work for you here. There are those that will think they know what is important and what they believe will happen because they think they have the right approach to the justice of the country. It doesn't work like that because, again, you're asking somebody to judge you in a court, even if you had the money and time to take it there. Even if you win in a court, you haven't won in the community, so you'll be forever looking over your shoulder. And there are examples of that, even recently, where sadly Americans have lost their lives, or allegedly. Food for thought, guys. Is it better not just to either come and go, or if you are going to stay here, just disappear off the radar so that you are not so noticeable? Doesn't mean you have to stay in your house and never come out. It just means that smiling, agreeing, accepting is a big thing and a big part of living here in the Philippines. Bye now.